Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Sheng. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. In recent times, there has been extensive global discourse surrounding a fascinating and a popular topic. Why did Xi Jinping abruptly alter his position and adopt a more accommodating stance towards the United States? How did the assertive wolf warrior diplomacy suddenly transition into a more amicable approach? Nevertheless, it's important to note that a wolf warrior diplomacy cannot fundamentally change its nature. As depicted in Chinese internet slang, when you have it under control, it appears passive. When the moment you loosen your grip, it can quickly turn the table. Why, after a decade of discussing the rise of the East and the decline of the West, and after emphasizing a significant transformation for 10 years, did Xi Jinping suddenly, on the global stage during the APEC meeting, came to the United States with a friendly demeanor and make a serious declaration? China has no intention of replacing the United States, and such a replacement is not feasible. Why did he abandon the lofty idea of this profound transformation he spoke about? What are the underlying reasons for Xi Jinping's abrupt change? While one could simply dramatize by suggesting that Xi Jinping is merely putting on an act and hasn't fundamentally changed, such an assertion may be somewhat cynical. Certainly, this kind of humor might have some merit, but a more in-depth international discourse is delving into the intrinsic reasons behind Xi Jinping's transformation. The prevailing view in Western media is that Xi Jinping has been notably assertive over the past 5 years, with this assertiveness not emerging immediately upon taking office, but becoming particularly pronounced during this period. This trend was especially evident during the pandemic, where he seemed to believe that China was on the brink of overtaking the United States. However, the recent shift in his stance, as perceived by mainstream Western opinion, is attributed to Xi Jinping recognizing a substantial gap still existing between China and the United States. The prevailing idea is that China cannot realistically surpass the US in the short term. Consequently, Xi Jinping is now emphasizing the notion that China's development requires the support of the United States. What led to the shift in Xi Jinping's perspective? Who influenced him with the idea that China was on the verge of surpassing the United States? Where did he acquire the information and make this assessment? How did this misjudgment occur? Let's delve into these questions today. I think Xi Jinping's misinterpretation of the shifting dynamics between China and the US can be attributed to two factors. The primary factor behind this misjudgment lies in the extrapolation made by numerous Chinese economists based on the historical growth rate of the Chinese economy. During the Hu Jintao administration, China's economy witnessed a 10% annual growth, leading to predictions that following the historical trend, China would soon surpass the United States in terms of GDP. If one assumes the inertia of this growth to be sustainable, it becomes reasonable to believe that China could quickly outpace the United States. In this context, it's challenging to argue that Xi Jinping was deceived, as this perspective was widely shared among Chinese economists, and Xi Jinping was part of the mainstream consensus, leading him to naturally embrace this belief. The second factor is Xi Jinping's reception of information suggesting the decline of the United States. What led him to believe in this decline? It primarily emanated from two pieces of information or key judgments made by Xi Jinping regarding the perceived deterioration of the United States. The first is the political debates and controversies within the United States. In Xi Jinping's view, the continuous political wrangling, particularly the intense competition between Trump and Hillary during the 2016 presidential election, is deemed undesirable and destabilizing. Furthermore, he interprets the stiffening of relations between the Trump administration and Europe as additional evidence of America's decline. Consequently, he sees the democratic debates and power struggles in the US as symbolic of a nation in decline. While one may not necessarily agree with his perspective, it can be comprehended within the framework of his reasoning. Secondly, Xi Jinping holds the view that the United States has declined due to a process of hollowing out, implying that it has been drained or depleted. This perspective is not only articulated in Chinese public discourse, but it also voiced by Trump and echoed in American media. The argument suggests that China has siphoned off job opportunities from the United States, leading to its hollowing out as factories have been relocated to China. Consequently, the narrative suggests that the United States is losing its manufacturing sector, approaching the point of near extinction. This stands as a persuasive piece of evidence contributing to the widespread belief in the decline of America among many Chinese people. Hence, with political discord on one side and economic hollowing out on the other, the belief is that the United States is in decline. Meanwhile, China, with the potential to sustain a 10% growth rate for at least another 2 decades, could realistically surpass the US by 2030 if the economic momentum persists. Regrettably, when the leadership baton passed to Xi Jinping, the annual growth rate plummeted from 10% to 5%, marking a halving of the previous rate, an outcome Chairman Xi did not foresee at the beginning of his tenure. Let's explore a viewpoint widely embraced in Chinese public discourse, the assertion that the US has experienced a hollowing out and no longer retains a manufacturing sector. We'll examine the actual situation in the US regarding this issue. China boasts no shortage of intelligent minds, and even within the Chinese Communist Party system, there are perceptive individuals. During the CCP's bold pursuit of overtaking, there were internal warnings from party officials cautioning Chinese society. However, these warnings were largely ignored at the time. Only recently has Chinese public brought attention to a speech given 3 years ago by Nian Yong, the former director of the Industry Department at the National Development and Reform Commission, aka NDRC. His speech, which served as a precinct warning back then, has now become a focal point of discussion, enabling more Chinese citizens to gain insights into the reality of the US manufacturing industry. Prior to this, Chinese economists and leaders had been conveying to the Chinese populace that the US manufacturing sector was in decline, with China taking its place as the manufacturing hub. Now, let's examine how Nian Yong, the foremost expert in the NDRC Industry Department, conveyed his cautionary message to the Chinese people and described the state of the US manufacturing industry. In 2020, amid China's focus on COVID-19 containment and the pursuit of zero COVID, Nian Yong delivered a speech that largely went unnoticed. However, his address delved into the intricacies of the US manufacturing industry. The key message of his speech was that the United States is indeed a significant player in manufacturing. Nian Yong underscored that US has consistently prioritized its manufacturing sector. He cautioned that if China fails to grasp this reality and continues to promote a new misleading concept, there will be a substantial cost. Looking back, his words appear to be directed at Xi Jinping, who may face a significant cost for his judgment. What is this cost? It involves becoming a subject of global ridicule. Despite initially asserting a favorable position and signaling a shift in global dynamics, Xi Jinping now finds himself in a position where he must humble himself and seek reconciliation with the United States. In his speech, Nian Yong discussed the critical role of manufacturing as the backbone of a national company and the fundamental carrier of science and technology. He emphasized that a country's technological prowess and economic strength are intricately linked to the development of its manufacturing industry, drawing attention to the prevailing belief in Chinese society that characterizes the US economy as a service-oriented, post-industrial society no longer focused on manufacturing. Nian Yong sought to correct this perception by shedding lights on the specific situation in the US. In 2019, while the service sector accounted for 81% of the US economy, ostensibly supporting the notion of a post-industrial economy, Nian Yong revealed that the US manufacturing industry reached a substantial scale of $2.36 trillion in the same year, comprising 11% of the total economic output. Within the US service sector, over 60% was found to service the manufacturing industry, constituting 48 to 50% of the total US economic output, effectively half of the country's economy. Nian Yong underscored that more than half of the US economy output dedicated to servicing manufacturing, and when combined with the manufacturing sector itself, it surpasses 60%. This highlights that the manufacturing industry constitutes over 60% of the US economic output, contradicting the notion that the United States has forsaken manufacturing. Nian Yong also referenced Trump's public declaration of the US aiming to become a superpower in global manufacturing, signaling a desire to reduce dependence on China. In conclusion, Nian Yong cautioned that if China does not gain a clear understanding of these facts and continues to promote new concepts without discernment, significant consequences may follow. Consider his remarks made at the beginning of 2020. Were they covered by the Chinese media at that time? Very minimally. Did they generate widespread resonance in public opinion? Not at all. Furthermore, during that period, the most prominently discussed new concept was passing on a curve, particularly after China successfully contained the spread of the epidemic in April 2020, while the Western countries faced turmoil. In this scenario, passing on a curve became the predominant narrative in China. Consequently, Xi Jinping, seemingly forgetful and impulsive, driven not only by his personal superficiality but also influenced by the prevailing sentiment in Chinese public opinion, is not an anomaly or an outlier. Rather, he is merely a more radical manifestation under the influence of the broader Chinese public discourse. This explains his judgment to prematurely declare the rise of the East and the decline of the West, asserting that the timing and the momentum were in China's favor. He appeared fixated on the belief that the significant changes of the century were accelerating. Therefore, let's take a moment today to revisit why Xi Jinping exhibited such assertiveness over the past 2 years. Why did he engage in conflicts at the Indian border, dispute maritime territories with the Southeast Asian nations, confront the United States head-on with a confrontational approach, and employ military threats against Taiwan? It appears that he was involved on multiple fronts simultaneously. If we reflect on the atmosphere in the middle of 2020, it becomes evident why Xi Jinping exerted such confidence. However, looking back, it seems he might have been somewhat overconfident. Regrettably, during that time, the rational analysis and the comments did not receive much attention in the Chinese public opinion landscape. It's unlikely that Xi Jinping was exposed to these measured perspectives. Consequently, based on the analysis above, we gain a clearer understanding of why Xi Jinping abruptly changed his approach, adopted a more conciliatory demeanor, and adjusted his stance towards the United States. It seems that Xi Jinping is now recognizing the errors in his judgment. The Western world is not as vulnerable and the United States is not as weakened as he might have perceived. Making an early disclosure appears to have been a mistake. This is a reasonable inference about Xi Jinping, and it's likely he harbors such a realization. However, it's essential to acknowledge that Xi Jinping consistently surpassed our most pessimistic speculations, often exceeding the bounds of our imagination. Consider a more brash, arrogant, and impulsive Xi Jinping. His current change in stance could be a form of insincerity. It's plausible that he doesn't necessarily believe he made a wrong judgment. This shift in demeanor might be a pragmatic move to alleviate domestic tensions and the pressures in China, enhance the external environment, or temporarily adopt the strategy of hiding one's capabilities and biding one's time. While this possibility exists, Whether Xi Jinping genuinely thinks he misjudged the situation or is merely attempting to portray a harmless facade, it doesn't significantly contribute to his governance or the image of the ruling party. After Xi Jinping's visit to the United States, a brief period of 2 weeks without Chinese public opinion criticizing the US was maintained. However, following a recent incident involving a US warship sailing in the South China Sea, China's Southern Theater Command has resumed openly criticizing the United States. So, why can't Xi Jinping sustain a continuous change in demeanor and make the act more convincing? The reason lies in the governing logic and the system he has established, which have constrained his ability to maintain a strategy of hiding capabilities and biding time, diminishing the flexibility he once possessed. Over the past decade, Xi Jinping has consistently emphasized nationalism, now attempting to discuss flexibility and strategy with the Chinese people, the military, or the passionate young patriots aka Little Pinks is proving ineffective. Xi Jinping's current inflexible style of governance is essentially a trap he created for himself. The nationalist and patriotic image he cultivated, mobilizing millions of Little Pinks as a significant base of public support, leaves little room for discussing strategic nuances. Some netizens humorously suggest that Xi Jinping can only maintain in a facade of being agreeable in front of the US for a few days at most. Even if he desired to change course, the staunch support of the Little Pinks and the fervent sentiments within the People's Liberation Army and the assertive wolf warrior diplomacy pose significant challenges. This ironic situation underscores Xi Jinping's predicament, a self-imposed trap resulting from the nationalist image he crafted and the extensive support he garnered, particularly from the Little Pinks. In essence, he is facing the consequences of his own actions. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly. Until then, be well.